Hello and welcome to our first video here for Chapter 8. Chapter 8 deals with political parties. Let's go ahead and get started. We got some nice animation for this slideshow. Alright, political parties. Let's start off with a general definition. Political party is a group of individuals with a common interest or common interests who are going to identify with a group label. This group label is going to bind this group of common interests together. Okay, think about it kind of like a trademark or a name brand like Nike or Under Armour. And this group of individuals with these common interests are going to seek to control government by winning elections. Right, and that's the key component when we're talking about political parties, is the fact that they're organizations designed to win elections. And that's how they're going to get involved and control the government process, by winning elections. That's going to be a very different situation with, let's say, an interest group, which we'll be talking about here soon. Interest groups attempt to influence policy basically from the outside in, whereas a political party, by trying to get their candidates with that group label elected to office, working from the inside out. All right, let's talk about what the party does, or the tasks of the party. The first thing that a party does is it actually chooses candidates. Political parties are going to work very hard to find candidates that appeal to voters. They got to fit that group label, and they have to appeal to voters. Appealing to voters in whatever state they're running for office, whatever county, if we're talking about a national office like the presidency, they have to have national appeal. So political parties are going to be very influential and instrumental in picking candidates that fit their party. They're also going to be very involved in running campaigns. So not only are they going to pick the candidates, but they can be, and not always, but they can be very important in running those candidate campaigns, or at least assisting those candidates run their campaigns. Parties are going to create tags, which are going to give cues to voters. You have different types of voters. You have voters who are very aware, very interested, very knowledgeable. And this idea of Republican Democrat, it's kind of just a tag or a label. But for some voters, that tag of Republican Democrat equals kind of what they know. Hey, I know if they're going to run as a Democrat that they believe A, B, and C. They believe in, let's say, for example, pro-life, greater government regulation, and higher taxes. So they give this tag, or this label is going to give cues to voters in terms of who they would like to vote for, without them having really a lot of information. They also are going to endorse and articulate particular policy. For example, let's talk about the Affordable Care Act. Republicans really no excitement about endorsing or articulating the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare. On the other hand, you have a Democratic Party who's embraced, who's endorsed and articulated, and actually has brought to fruition the implementation of the Affordable Care Act. And then finally, they're going to help coordinate policy making. When they are the party in power, they are going to help coordinate if they have the majority in the House or the Senate. If they have the presidency, they're going to basically propose legislation. They're going to drum up public support for it. They're going to find allies in Congress. They're going to use their votes to push through that policy. Okay. They also are going to be very crucial once the policy is being implemented to make sure that that policy gets the proper attention and focus that it needs to when it's being rolled out. All right, we'll talk a little bit here about the Downs model. All right. Anthony Downs was a political scientist who attempts to create a relationship between citizens' party and policy. Really, how does our system work is really what he was looking at. And what he came up with was the rational choice theory, and this is something that you need to know. The rational choice theory boils down to simply the fact that political processes and the outcomes are the result of purposive behavior. All right, voters and politicians and their actions with one another. It's really two-sided. On one side, you have the voters who want to maximize the chances of their favored policy getting enacted by government. And again, they're going to put their self-interest or their best interest to the front of that decision making. And on the other side, you have your political parties whose main goal and only true goal is to win office and then control policy. So really you have kind of a mutual relationship here where parties are really going to be looking to find that middle ground of public opinion, that middle ground of voters, and again, after we do some research, you'll see that the American public kind of divides itself. You have your left, your right, and your middle, and that middle is really the difference in whether or not you're going to get your policy enacted. You have to capture those middle of the road voters, those independents. All right, party identification is another big part of political parties. Party identification is when a person self-identifies or self-proclaims that they're a member of a particular party. This is one of the strongest, if not the strongest, indicator of how a person is going to participate in politics. If you come out and say, I am a Democrat, you are going to vote, you're going to support Democratic policy. If you come out and say, I am a Republican, you are going to support Republican policy and vote for Republican candidates. Okay. Over time, more and more Americans don't self-identify. Okay. More and more Americans pick that, I'm moderate, I'm middle of the road, I'm independent, then tag themselves with a particular major party, one of the Republican or Democratic Party. And this has been going on for a very long time. We can trace it back into the 90s, and it was right around 40% in 2008. So four out of every 10 people surveyed, instead of picking Republican or Democrat, would pick other independent or, hey, I'm a moderate. They wouldn't align themselves. All right, as party identification has weakened, voter loyalty has also declined, which means people aren't like they used to. If you go back to the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, if you said, hey, I'm a Democrat, you were going to vote for Democrats. If you said, I'm a Republican, you were going to vote for Republican candidates. Really, in the past, if you, were or self-identified as a Republican, let's say, for example, you would vote what was called a straight ticket. So that ballot all the way down, boom, I want all Republicans. Or boom, I want all Democrats. You would vote a straight ticket. And that's really changed. In particular, over the last 20 years, more and more voters vote what are called split tickets, where they're going to vote for some Democratic candidates and some Republican candidates, depending on person, race, and position. Okay, political party organization. Basically, political parties are divided up into three general segments. You have your national party, which is the big group. You have that divided into 50 state parties, and then these state parties are then divided into thousands of local parties. The shape of this system, you would think, is a pyramid, a hierarchical system with the national party at the very top. Well, when we look at this situation, okay, it looks like this. You would think that this is the way that the political party system in the United States works, from the top down, all right? But that's really not the case, all right? It really is not a top-down structure. Our system in the United States is very decentralized and fragmented, all right? If you go and look at some political party breakdowns in Europe, you'll see that they do have a hierarchical structure, and the National Party has a ton of power. That's just not the case here in the United States. If anything, most of the power is wielded at the local level. Okay. The chairperson at the top of the pyramid really doesn't have much power. The only power they're really going to have is at the time they're having a national election every 4 years when we're running for president or vice president positions. Candidates in the United States really get elected on their own. They don't get elected by party, again, because we have the system that we have, the winner-take-all system, the system where candidates are running on their own merits as well as belonging to a particular party. You see parties helping, but most of the time the local and state levels are going to have more influence on those elections. And the candidates are going to basically manage a lot of those campaigns independently, or have a lot of authority outside of the party. And candidates really don't need any help from the party. most of the time. The party organization has a very limited role in most cases. All right, let's take a quick look at the local party. The local party, we have old school, the party machine. Very powerful party organization from the late 19th century to the 1930s, and these were focused in the large urban areas. For example, if you remember Boss Tweed, that would be a good example of a part of a party machine. Party organization really would depend on rewarding its members with stuff, giving them things for their votes or their support. All right, patronage was a key. All right, patronage is that key reward based on who you know in the party. Patronage could be a thing like getting a job or a promotion or a special contract to help out your business. These party machines really aren't that strong today. Again, there is some urban politics that do have a certain amount of strength, but they really don't have the same impact that they once had. You know, the limits on political parties, the changes to the primary system, expansion of the electorate has really hurt the party machine system of the past. All right, state parties have very loose organization. No two are the same. In some states, they're really strong and well-financed, like in Pennsylvania, but in other states, they're really weak and they don't have a lot of influence. States have a lot of power in terms of creating, managing, administering elections, ballots, voter registration, and voting. So again, it is important, and there's a lot of stuff going on in states in terms of elections because that's one of their powers under the 10th Amendment, which falls to them. So state parties can be very influential. All right, one of the biggest ways that state parties can be influential is they decide what kind of primary the state is going to have. And we'd have two basic types. We have the closed primary, where only people who have registered with a particular party label are allowed to vote in that primary. Okay, example would be Pennsylvania. Open primary is when voters choose on election day which primary they would like to vote in. So for example, let's go back to 2008. On the Democratic ticket or Democratic primary, you had Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. Here in the state of Virginia, we have an open primary system. When you go to the ballots, you can pick which ballot you would like to participate in. So if you wanted to vote for on the Republican side, you could have voted for John McCain or any of those other Republican candidates. You could do that. Or you could choose to vote in the Democratic primary and make a decision between Obama or Hillary. Here in Virginia, since we're an open primary, you could choose. In Pennsylvania, and like most states that have closed primaries, you have to be registered as with a particular party. So on your voter registration card, it says Republican, Democrat, or Independent. All right, and you have to vote in whichever primary you've identified with. All right, a little bit more about the National Party Organization. We're going to finish up. The National Convention is the one time that the National Party actually has some real power, and that only happens just about every 4 years. It does happen every 4 years. One, it writes the party platform, which lays out the foundation for the party moving forward. And it is responsible for nominating candidates for both president and vice presidential positions. All right, I thank you for joining me. I'm sorry we went a little bit over, but make sure you fill out that Google form, and we'll see you soon.